Let me just introduce. Oh, what you doing there? You're listening to Money FM Radio 93.7. This is Stephanie. On the other side, I'm joined by Mr. Lusambo on accounting and business. We do have an interesting topic today. We're looking at the future of the dollar. You know what to do. If you want to be part of our discussion, the number is 077-1616290. And obviously, that is the number you will be calling us on, 077-1616290. Later on, we will display it because we are live on Facebook. For those that are listening to us using the mainstream, we're live on Facebook, Money FM Zambia 93.7. If you're listening to us live and you want to be part of the conversation, just drop us a text message in the comment section and we'll be able to read it just like that. Mr. Lusambo, what is the future of the dollar?
Yeah, fantastic. So it's a beautiful session, and there's lots of speculations. And this session comes at a time where we're experiencing the change that we've never seen in years. The recent studies have shown that the dollar's strength is collapsing at a pace never seen in 100 years. And we have seen, how the dollar has been able to gain its massive power over the years. And in the recent past, we have seen how the dollar has been able to simply dominate other countries, but also to impose sanctions on other countries. So the United States and, of course, their dollar, they have done tremendously well to their advantage, something that one scholar quoted and quote the exorbitant privilege of the dollar. So looking at the future of the dollar, we will not understand the future of the dollar without first understanding the history of the dollar. So first of all, we want to go through a series of the things that led to the dollar to being where it is today. What has made it possible for the dollar to be where it is today? So those are the things we want to look at first. Before we even go to discuss the future, we want to ensure we understand what made the dollar to be where it is as of today. Why are we even discussing this issue? So now just a brief history of the dollar, Stephanie. You're going to understand that, the dollar's role as the primary currency for the global economy allows the United States to borrow money more easily and impose painful financial sanctions. But some experts say the costs to areas such as the Rust Belt are too high to bear. But anyway, we want to get into the details so that we can understand really what really is the future of the dollar. Okay, where are we with the dollar and where are we going with the dollar? So let's get into a bit of some history. We dig deeper into the history, and also we get to understand why are we where we are today, and how we're going to come out of this issue. So now to just begin with, I want to share my screen just to, let's see if I can share my screen so that I can share a bit of some photos here. I'm not sure you can see that. Yeah, I want to share a bit of some photos. So, all right. Okay, I'm not sure you can see that, but I hope that you can see it. I'm not sure you can see that. Can you see that?
We're able to see the currency manipulation.
Okay, fantastic. So,
yeah.
So now that's where we are looking at. So now, what I want us to look at is this other one, the one that I've just shared here, the one that shows the future of the dollar. Okay, fantastic. So if you're able to see, that's fantastic. So we can get started into, a bit of the history of how we came to be where we are today. So now, just a bit of history when it comes to the dollar. Since the end of World War II, Stephanie, the dollar has been the world's most important currency. And it is the most commonly held reserve currency and the most widely used currency for international trade and, of course, other transactions around the world. We have no doubt that it does as over its own weaknesses, but of course we want to mention that the centrality of the dollar, Stefan, to the global economy confers some benefits to the United States, including borrowing money abroad more easily and extending the reach of the U.S. financial sanctions. But if you think about it, the U.S. has been able to borrow money more easily from other countries, and they don't pay their debt. Do you know why they don't pay their debt? Because if they borrow money from you it is you who's going to suffer, partly because for them they'll just print out the money. Don't have to stress about it. But some experts, of course, argue that dollar supremacy comes at a cost. All right, increased foreign demand for U.S. bonds bids, bids up the dollar and makes U.S. export less competitive, resulting in trade deficits. So, what experts say that the fact that the dollar has been the most used currency and it being the one that facilitates the global economy, it comes at a cost, but because when the dollar's strength is a bit higher, it makes it difficult for people in the United States to export their products to the outside world. That's what experts argue. They say it becomes expensive for the United States citizens to use to benefit more from the dollar because people like ourselves, if, for example, today I need about 20 kwacha to get $1. So it's going to be expensive for somebody like me to import something from the United States because it's expensive. That's what they're arguing. But anyway, let's get into and see whether that's a solid argument. All right. Now, if you look at this one, they also say that the dollar's role in many global transactions puts pressure on the United States Federal Reserve to act as the world's lender at last resort during economic crisis, such as the one that we saw, of course, recently in 2008 when we had the global crisis. The dollar was the last resort for, of course, lending money. So the issue I want us to understand here. So we're giving a bit of some history. When did the dollar gain its momentum? Just after World War II. What are the benefits? The United States can borrow money easily. They can control the international economy, and they can impose several other sanctions on other countries. Now, the issue I want us to understand as we get into the future of the dollar is also the reserve currency, because we know that the dollar is a reserve currency. And for those of you who do not know, a reserve currency is a foreign currency that the central bank or treasury holds as part of its country's formal foreign exchange reserves. That's what we refer to as a reserve currency. Let me repeat that. A reserve currency, people, is simply a foreign currency that a central bank or treasury holds as part of its country's formal foreign exchange reserves. Now, countries, Stephanie, hold reserves for a number of reasons, including number one, to weather economic shocks, pay for imports, save debts, and of course, moderate the value of its own currency. So many countries cannot borrow money or pay for foreign goods in their own currencies. That's the point we're trying to emphasize here. All right. Now, since much of international trade is done in dollars and therefore need to hold reserves to ensure a steady supply of imports during crisis and also assure creditors that the debt that we're going to pay them. So what this means, it means this. It means that countries like Zambia, for example, we cannot buy things outside Zambia using our kwacha. Nobody knows what kwacha is. Even if you have 10 million kwacha here in Zambia, it is useless to the outside world because you cannot use it to go and buy in the United States. You can't go to China and pay in kwacha. You can't. So the only way other people and the creditors are going to take us seriously is if we hold a reserve, all right, of dollars in our reserves. So we need to put our reserves in dollars. Now that also shows our creditors that if they lend us money, we'll be able to pay looking at the reserves that we have. All right. So we can be able to trade with the international community. We can be able to borrow from them and pay back, but because we have a good reserve of amount that is stored in dollars. Now, by buying, Stephanie, and selling currencies on the open market, our central bank can influence the value of the country's currency, which can provide some bit of stability and, of course, maintain investor confidence. For instance, if the value of the Zambian kwacha starts to fall during an economic downturn, the Central Bank of Zambia can step in and use its foreign reserves to bid up its value. And we have seen this in the recent past. We saw the MPC, they did increase the unit points from 11 to 11.025, okay, which made the cost of borrowing to get a bit up, partly because they wanted to control the inflation rate and also control the economy. So conversely, countries can intervene to stop their currencies from appreciating and make their exports cheaper. Now, what happens is this, Stephanie. Once the Zambian kwacha appreciates, all right, when the Zambian kwacha appreciates, it becomes our imports cheaper. So if the kwacha is 2 kwacha to the dollar, that means we can import things easily from the outside world because our kwacha is stronger, we can buy. But the problem comes in, we cannot export because the things buying from us becomes expensive. This is why you see the central bank coming in place. Whenever the kwacha gains some strength, whenever the kwacha loses some value, the central bank through its monetary policies come in place to come and help maintain a steady increase in the value of either the kwacha or the dollar. Of course, we have not much control over the dollar, but we can control our kwacha and our economic factors. For example, today the kwacha is weak. All right. Now the kwacha is so weak that somebody from the United States can come to Zambia, Stefan, today with simply $1. This guy can go and buy bread and sugar for 2 kwacha, and this guy can have a meal and go to sleep with just $1. A Zambian guy with 1 kwacha cannot buy a sweet. That's how terrible the dollar has been, and that's how we have been oppressed. Since we're able to buy fuel at 28 point something kwacha per liter, partly because our kwacha is in shambles, our kwacha is crashing. We have no say against the dollar. Even if the dollar falls, the sad part about that is that even if the dollar falls, it's not our making. All right, we are going to demonstrate how the US has been able to manipulate, all right, their currency on paper to make it lose a bit of some value for them to sell to us what they want to sell to us. And of course, when they want to buy from us, they increase the value of the dollar so that they can buy our products at a cheaper price. A very, very exorbitant and unfair advantage on the part of the US and their dollar. So we want to get into the details of this issue. So the future of the dollar has been a terrible one. Okay, we have seen how this terrible act has been able to disadvantage most of course of our economic activities. Now let's get into details of this again, Stefan. I want to comment again here that if you think of it,
Mm,
Stefan, all right,
mm,
if you think of it, central banks, all right, most countries want to hold their reserves in currency with a large and open financial markets, since they want to be sure that they can access their reserves in a moment of need. This is why
mm,
our countries hold our reserves in the dollar. We want to access that amount at any time we need it. So central banks often hold currencies in the form of government bonds, for example, such as the Zambian government bonds, treasury bills, of course, the US treasury bills. The US treasury market remains by far the world's largest and most liquid market of all. All right, on paper, of course. So the reason why we do that is because we want to have a problem. We don't want to start going through exchange rates. No, let's change our kwacha into dollar. We want to hold our reserves in dollar, being the world reserve currency, so that in case we have a problem, we can quickly tap into our reserves and control the situation. That saves us time of conversion from the kwacha to the dollar, or from the kwacha to the euros. No, we need to have a reserve. That's why central banks hold their reserves in a foreign currency. Now, if you think of it this way, Stefan, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the board responsible for monitoring the international monetary system, recognizes 8 major reserve currencies. They say one of them is the Australian dollar, the British pound, the Chinese yuan, the Canadian dollar, of course, and of course the Japanese yen. All right. Now, the US dollar is by far the most common held reserve currency, making up more than 60% of the global foreign exchange reserves. So worldwide, all right, worldwide, the US dollar makes up 60% of the world's reserves. Now, that gives the dollar an unfair advantage, all right? That gives the dollar a very, very terrible, unfair advantage. Now, I want us to get into a bit of some explanations here for us to understand what we're talking about so that it can make sense from the perspective of course, a layman. Now I'm gonna share
mm,
something here just to illustrate this one. Let's go. Okay, where are we? Okay, there we go. Okay, unfortunately, I'm unable to zoom this thing, but I wish I could zoom it a bit further. Unfortunately, is there a way I can zoom this thing? Okay, I'm unable to zoom this thing. So if you can see on this diagram, well, it shows us the most foreign exchange reserves are the US. The US dollar owes about 62%, followed by the euro was 20.1%, and of course Japanese yen. If you see the Chinese yuan, we can't even talk about. It was about 2%. All right. So
mm,
the United States print out of dollars, and 60% of those dollars are held out of United States. This we are talking about the future of the US. All right. So now, just to give some credit here, you can tell that the US is by far the most used currency on earth, with about 62% of their reserves being the world reserve being held in dollar. This is according to a survey that was published in 2020. All right. This is a
mm,
2020 survey that shows the US dollar leading leading the team on top of everything, doing everything possible to stay on top.
mm,
Now, if you look at China, this is one thing that will surprise you. If you look at China, China has by far the most reported foreign exchange reserves of any country with more than $3 trillion. Japan is in second. All right, around 1.3 trillion. India is in third. Saudi Arabia is in fourth. Switzerland is in fifth. But why is the United States the most used currency? If we have China with over $3 trillion, because China is by far the most important foreign exchange reserves of any country on earth, and still they are the ones who are having 2%. Why? All right. The reason is going to be a very simple reason, because China has faced several restrictions. So now the question that you must answer is this: if China is holding over 3 trillion, all right, $3 trillion as the most foreign exchange reserve, the US dollar can't even compete. It's somewhere number 17, number 18, somewhere down there. But why is it the widely used? Okay. The question we have to
Mm,
answer is, how did the US dollar become the world's leading reserve currency? What happened for this dollar to be the world most used currency? Now, we want to explain here, Stefan, that the dollar's status as the global reserve currency was simply cemented in the aftermath of the World War II by the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference, in which 44 countries agreed to the creation of the IMF and the World Bank. Okay. Of course, some economists have argued that the dollar had overtaken the British pound, of course, on paper, as the leading reserve currency as early as the mid 1920s. That's also on paper. All right. So the United States, starting from the 1920s all the way to 1930s, 1960s, all right, the US dollar has been able to dominate other countries, and they've been able to use their dollar to punish other countries. For example, recently we saw in Russia that the United States imposed sanctions that were able to hinder Russia from its economic benefits in billions and billions of dollars. We saw in the UK alone, where the owner of Chelsea Football Club faced sanctions for just being Russian. All right, he lost over $92 billion. So this strength that the dollar has given the Americans an unfair advantage. Now let me bring it down to the common guy, somebody who does not understand these terminologies. Why do we say the US has been able to have an unfair advantage over other currencies? Here's what happens. If you are in Zambia right now, Stefan, you want to order something from the US, you're going to spend about 20 point something where kwacha to get $1 to buy what you want to buy. That's not so bad. But the problem comes in when the United States wants to buy things from you. When they want to buy things from our country, what they are going to do, they are going to strengthen their dollar so much so that they are getting our stuff almost for free. You understand? So we are being abused. We have gold, we have copper, but we can't keep our reserves in copper. We can't keep our reserves in gold like they are doing it. The United States and the UK, they have one of the world's biggest gold reserves in the world, without a single mine of gold mine in the UK. And they hold the largest gold reserve. And they are backing their currency using gold because they know gold is solid, it's tangible, you can touch it. As we're holding our reserves in dollar, which is simply paper. Now, paper can lose value, paper can be bent, paper can be torn down. All right. So what they do, if they want to buy from us, they are going to strengthen their currency so much that they are coming to get our copper and our gold almost free. But when they want to sell to us what they have made, their products, all right, what do? They make an artificial reduction in the fall of the dollar so that we can think that our quality is performing well. Let's now order things online. No, they are playing with us. They can increase the value of the dollar. If they want to buy raw materials from Africa, they buy. Once they are done producing, they make an artificial force fall of the dollar. Here we are happy, our government is working. Yes, things are happening. Let's order things online. The dollar agua. Nothing. They are the people playing with us. They want to sell their products to us. They want to dump the items to us. So once we begin to scramble buying things from the US and other European nations, we are sending money out of Africa to them. That's how they remain in control, and that's their economy remains one of the world's biggest economies of all time. Partly because whenever there's a certain reduction in the dollar, people in Africa begins to rush. There's these friends of people trying to buy cars, buying stuff online. Those guys are creating thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs in their countries. Now, once they are done selling, what do? They strengthen the dollar. It goes up. They begin to buy our raw materials. Once they are done buying, they reduce it a little bit for us to buy from them. So this is how they have been able to play with African countries for many, many, many years. The governments know it. The economists know it. Financial accountants know it. Experts know it, but no one talks about it because everybody
And
is
maybe the
scared.
question is why.
Yeah, the question is they want to remain the most powerful economy. Here's what happens, Stefan. If the US wants to buy from us, they want to buy our products. They are simply going to strengthen the strength of their dollar so that they can get our products almost for free. Now, when they want to sell to us, they have an artificial fall in the value of the dollar. On paper, we see the dollar has fallen, the kwacha has gained. What do? We begin to rush into buying from them. We are creating jobs in their countries because now the suppliers and the manufacturers are now able to sell rapidly to us here in Africa, dumping their products to us. So while we are happy here, we are getting into a frenzy saying that the dollar has gained, the dollar has fallen, the kwacha has gained value. Nothing has changed. It is just a simple artificial fall, and there's evidence to that. Let me bring about evidence. What happened in just in 2012 from a cyber that was carried out in 2012 to show how the Americans were able to play with this with the dollar so that they can influence the economy, of course, in their country, but also in other countries, and how they were able to manipulate, all right, currency manipulation. Now you can look at the screen. I'm unable to, unfortunately, I'm unable to expand the screen. That is simply a line that shows the United States in 2012 survey. They lost over $500 billion, all right, partly because they were able to manipulate the currency to suit their economic needs. If they want to sell to Africa, what do? They are going to reduce their currency down a little bit, all right. They have an artificial fall on paper. For us, we are thinking the dollar has fallen because they want to sell to us. So what do? We begin to rush. We begin to buy things from them. We buy, we buy. But once we spend all our monies, now they want to come and get our raw materials. What do? They strengthen their dollar. Now they begin to get our goods almost for free. Now, what happened in 2012? It backfired on them. They end up losing over $500 billion because they had a deficit in the balance of payments. They did this, fake artificial fall in the dollar, which resulted into the American exporters failing to sell things to African nations because the dollar became a bit stronger and people could not buy from them. They lost over $500 billion, and that's when the game now
Mhm.
changed. So they've been able to play this game for a very, very long time. So if you see the dollar goes up, the kwacha goes against value, the kwacha is value. Sometimes it's not because our government is working. Sometimes because the Americans, they want to control how we buy things from them and how we do business with them for their economy to grow. This one in 2012 resulted in job loss of about 1 to 5 million jobs were lost in the US because of the mistake they made. That an artificial increase in the value of the dollar, which made African nations and other nations to fail to buy from them, and as such, they made losses, and 5 million jobs were lost in the United States in 2012. So there's evidence to show how the United States has been able to manipulate currency to benefit themselves. It's not about our government. It's not about even us entrepreneurs doing the best that we can. Sometimes it's just about the United States trying to manipulate us so that they can get our copper and our gold and our minerals at almost free. You can imagine in 2015, in 2020, 2021, the dollar was at 22 kwacha to 1 kwacha. It was at $1 to 22 kwacha. So if they wanted to buy gold from us or they wanted to buy copper from us, they were getting it at almost for free. At almost for free. So this is how the United States has been able to manipulate, of course, other nations into appearing like they are the ones who are happening, but they're not even happening. Now, if you think of it this way, you are two people, Stephanie. There's you and me. I tell you, Stephanie, keep your money in paper. Well, I'll keep my money in assets. For me, I'm building assets. I'm building houses. I'm building hotels. I'm building lodges. For you, I tell you, no, Stephanie, don't build houses. Don't buy lodges. Don't buy these assets. Keep money in the bank. All right. So for them, they are buying gold from us. They are backing their money with gold, like the United Kingdom. They're backing their currency with gold. But us, we can't back our money with our copper. We can't back our money with our gold. We can't back our money with our minerals. We are backing our money with a dollar reserve currency. You know what can happen? If they told us today to implement whatever else they want us to implement and we refuse, they are simply going to freeze our dollars. They are simply going to freeze our reserves, and as the country, are going to become broke. In the end, what do? We dance to their tune. That's how they've been able to control nations. Once you go against the United States, your currency, your reserves are going to be frozen like they did to Russia, like they did to Iran, like they have done to Cuba, like they have done to several other countries, Afghanistan, like they have done to Libya, like they have done to different other countries in the world. They impose sanctions on other nations. And how they do it, they play with the international banking system, the SWIFT. All right. The SWIFT is simply the society's worldwide interbank, of course, communications, financial communications, telecommunications. What that happens if you want to send money from Africa to the United States, the SWIFT is a code that is used to identify the bank where you're sending from, the branch, the location, the country, and also goes to the specific account where you're sending. So once you go against the United States, what they do, they block that national bank system. You become broke. You can't transact. You can't send money out of your country to other countries because you've been blocked from that international banking system. And because you've been blocked, you can't transact. Your people can't transact. The government can't transact. So in the end, you are broke. You have no economy, like what Zimbabwe has been able to do. They have no economy in Zimbabwe because they have been given these strenuous sanctions, which are extremely punitive in nature, to simply destroy the economy of Zimbabwe. So the SWIFT has been able to be used as a tool by the United States using their dollar to impose unnecessary sanctions. Imagine what happened to the owner of Chelsea Football Club. For simply being Russian, he was sanctioned and lost about 92 billion US dollars in the end. All right. You can't withdraw that money because it's frozen. You can't have access to it. So they can control your money. So if you keep your money in the United States dollar, that means anytime they want to control you, they're going to control you. They will tell you what to do. You have no say. All right. And it's because of this that we have seen Russia, China, of course, the Saudi Arabia, Brazil, and several other countries of yesterday applied to join BRICS, but because they have seen that the United States has been able to have an unfair and exorbitant advantage over other countries. This is why in the past few days, we have seen the fall in the dollar because now countries have woken up. They have seen enough was enough. We've suffered at the hands of these people. It's time that we made our own currency or looked for a different alternative. So as things stand today, Stephanie, while it is true that the dollar is still the most widely used currency, in the next few weeks, things are going to change. If you have seen, we have just as of yesterday and the other day, 16 more countries have left the dollar. They are planning to join BRICS, which means they'll begin to dump the dollar. So now nobody wants to have anything to do with the dollar going forward. Of course, the Americans won't go down without a fight, but it's a fight which they have lost years ago. Now what we are seeing, these are results of China. China has over 3.2 trillion as in world in every country's reserve. 17 times, 20 times, whatever times more than the United States. But still, China has been able to face restrictions, including the euro. They face so many restrictions, so much that they cannot even expand the way they should be able to expand. But now time has come for other currencies, other countries, and other regions to exhibit their strength and trade fairly. It's not okay, Stefan, to buy a phone. Somebody from the United States can go in a shop and just get $250 and buy this phone. For me in Zambia, I'm supposed to spend 17,000 to buy a phone. Why? Because these people have destroyed our currency, they have destroyed our economy, and our dollar is weak so much. So you can't even buy a sweet from a one kwacha. You can't buy because our currency is weak. All right. So now, what should you and me do, Stephanie? Because now these things are now becoming so tough. Like we have said, we've given a bit of history about the dollar, how the dollar became so powerful, how the dollar was weaponized. George Bush did it to Iraq, weaponized the dollar by imposing sanctions on Iraq. Trump did it to Iran, imposed sanctions on Iran. And we have seen Cuba up to today, they cannot trade, they can't make their own budget because their reserves were frozen. They have these international sanctions, and several other countries on earth that don't agree with the United States policy are facing sanctions. So when Americans want to push their agenda, they're able to push it easily because they use the strength of the dollar. That's the only asset they have. They have nothing else other than the dollar. If they want you to buy more dollars, they'll come to you and borrow money from you. They get your dollars out of the economy, they borrow from you so that you can go and buy more dollars from them. But when times for paying comes, they won't pay with the money. They will simply print it out. But why are they borrowing money from you? To stress you. All right? So now all these tough tactics that the US has been able to do over the years, now people are now waking up. And this is what we saw. This is what you saw. Just listen to what Luto had to say a few days ago when it's come to the dollar and its future. Listen to our President Luto of Kenya.
You better do what you must do, because this market is going to be different in a couple of weeks. And secondly, we, through the central bank, we are having conversations to reinstate the interbank exchange market that has since not worked. And I am happy that the players in that sector, including our banks, are coming forward and they are participating, and they are working with the central bank so that we can again take charge of our market, and that it is not allowed to be distorted by brokers. I'm told the only place where brokers are accepted is at the exchange. Anywhere else, they are banned. And so I just want to assure those in Kenya who are facing challenges of access to dollars that we have taken steps to ensure that availability in the next couple of weeks is going to be very different, because our fuel companies will now be paying for fuel in Kenya shillings. They do not have to look for dollars every month, because we have done what we must do as government to ensure that we ease the burden on people who want to realize their returns in dollars. And I was being told by the chairman of NSC, so Mr. Chairman, you have nothing to worry about. We have taken adequate steps to make sure that that is sorted.
So, Stefan, that was the Kenyan president talking a few days ago regarding the dollar issue. They are moving away from the dollar. Even warned, he said, those of you who are holding on to dollars are going to fail to incur some losses. Can you do what you must do before it's too late? And not only Ruto, we have seen also South Africa and also have done the same.
In order to avoid the consequences of sanctions that arise from that, let's walk away from the dollar. And hence there's a global discussion taking place about that, and some of it is bilateral. When Russia trades with China, there's no reason why they must use dollars to exchange. None. So that even India is saying the same thing. So globally, there's a discussion that is taking place to say we must find alternative means of trading among ourselves and not subject ourselves to the situation where there's one currency in the world which becomes the global reserve currency, because it gives the country that is the issuer of the money, that's the United States, it gives it the power to impose its will on everybody, because you are
Wow.
Or you can see, Stephanie, that other countries as well, all right? Other countries have seen the need, they have seen.
We look like we are losing Mr. Lusambo on the other side, but I should say it's an interesting conversation. I'm picking from the South African former president's statement, who says there's no reason to use dollar, for instance, when trading between Zambia and China. Yeah.
Yes. There's no reason to use the dollar, Stefan. That's what the former president of South Africa has been able to say. We have seen the current president also has made some comments, and several other African leaders are making comments. So what's the future of the dollar? The truth is the dollar is falling, people. All right? You can't hold on to the dollar. The days of the dollar are over. Of course, we know that the dollar, the US will not go down without a fight. We know they are going to fight, but they lost the battle. China won the battle years back. And you can see the reason why people are running off from the Americans, they want to impose their cultures on us. They come to us and they impose their way of doing things. They influence our economy. We are working twice as hard. Americans have it easy to succeed in life than us in Africa, because an American can come to Africa with simply 20,000, simple $20,000 US. It's going to be a millionaire in Africa. It's gonna buy mansions, it's gonna build companies, it's gonna invest heavily in 20,000 US dollars. So they make it easier for their citizens to make money, to look like they are very smarter than everyone else. All right. This is why you see an American just selling some simple plastic bags is making millions of kwachas as compared to us in Africa working so hard. Why? Because the dollar has been weaponized. Sometimes, what they have done, they are going to ban traveling, like what happens in Zimbabwe. You can't travel out, in and out of Zimbabwe. You can't trade. You can't have an economy. You can't also be friends with other nations and trade with other nations. Up to today, Japan has been able to impose sanctions on Russia, which were forced on it by the United States, and now they refuse because they are still buying oil from Russia. So all these bad practices of the United States to benefit themselves and to keep their superpower status has now been felt to the last degree, and people are now saying enough is enough. It's the same instinct, Stephen, with an animal. When an animal is cornered and there's no way out, there's only one instinct: attack. Beat your dog, let it go into the corner. When it has no way out, it will attack you. This is what the Americans have done. They have cornered the world, and now there was no way out. Their own instinct was attack. So now other nations are now attacking back. And if you see what has been happening everywhere, not just in America or not just in Africa, but also in other nations. For example, we have seen the coming up of this guy here. Look at this one here.
Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. So, what exactly are the BRICS? BRICS is an acronym that stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These 5 emerging economies have been identified as having significant influence on regional and global affairs due to their economic growth, population size, and geopolitical importance. Now let's take a closer look at each of these countries. Brazil. Known for its vast natural resources, Brazil is the largest country in South America. Despite facing economic challenges in recent years, Brazil remains a key player in global trade, especially in agriculture and commodities. Russia. With abundant natural resources and a powerful energy sector, Russia is a major player on the global stage. Its political influence and strategic position in Eurasia make it an important member of the BRICS group. India. Boasting the world's second-largest population, India has experienced rapid economic growth in the past few decades. Its burgeoning middle class, technological innovation, and skilled workforce are driving its continued development. China. As the world's most populous country and second-largest economy, China is a global powerhouse. Its rapid economic growth, huge manufacturing base, and expanding international influence make it a critical member of the BRICS. South Africa. Though smaller in population and economy compared to the other BRICS nations, South Africa is the gateway to the African continent. Its politically rich natural resources make it an important player in the global economy. Together, the BRICS nations represent over 40% of the world's population and account for about 30% of the global GDP. They are working towards reducing their dependence on the US dollar and established institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. In fact, they've created their own development bank, the New Development Bank, to finance infrastructure projects and support sustainable development in their respective countries. As the BRICS nations continue to grow and evolve, their influence on the global economy and geopolitics is expected to increase. It's essential to keep an eye on these countries and the challenges they face as they navigate the complexities of the 21st century.
Stephanie, you can see for yourself that things about the future of the dollar is a messed up one, right? So the coming of BRICS, what BRICS has done, they are trying to run away from the IMF, from the World and from the World Bank and from the dollar, because these 3 institutions are like one institution that has been created to punish developing countries like ours. We have copper in our country, Stefan, and copper anchors our economy. It is copper that drives this country's economy, and we can't have a reserve using our own minerals. The Americans are having the reserves in dollars and having the reserves in gold, these precious minerals, but us, we can't. We have to keep paper. Now, what happens is this. If you are holding on to paper right now, you have a lot of paper money in the bank, a lot of dollars in the bank. What's going to happen in the next few months, few years from now? The richest people will not be those who have a lot of dollars. The richest people are going to be those who have gold, because there's going to be a transfer of wealth from those who have wealth, who have paper, to those who have actual solid, valuable resources like gold, silver. All right. Those are the people who are going to become the big shots, because now people are ditching the dollar. Everybody now is scrambling to go and buy gold, to go and buy silver, because that's the future now. All right. So now, how should you do, you, for a person like you and me? What should you do? Do what the Americans have done. What have they done? They have started buying gold. They have started buying precious metal, because they know they are going to face a reckoning they've never seen in 100 years. They know the economy is crashing. They know nothing's working out for them right now, and they are scared. They are paranoid. That's why you see them coming to Africa every now and then, because they know that the days of the dollar are over. So the best that you can do, if you have a lot of gold, a lot of dollars in your bank account, can you begin to invest in physical assets such as gold, silver, because those are the assets that are going to be more valuable in the near future than any other paper on earth. The dollar, the strength of the dollar lies in outside world. 60% of the dollar is used out of the United States. Only 40% of the dollar is used in the United States. And because now they are panicking, they are printing over $85 billion a month as compared to $45 billion a month, which is increasing out of pressure on the United States. So as things stand, if you're going to survive the next few years, can you do what you must do? Dump the dollar, buy gold, buy silver, buy physical assets. And as a nation, it's not a secret. The government is smart enough to know the future of the dollar. They know. There's nothing to be stubborn about. There's nothing to feel shy about. Let's go with the buyer. All right? We have to go with the buyer as a nation. There's nothing like bilateral relations for years. Can you go with the buyer? Because we know that the new guy in town is the yuan. The yuan is taking over the world, and the government that is smart, like several other governments have done, they need to dump the dollar and go with the buyer. There's nothing wrong with that. We say we're a neutral country, all right? If we deal with Washington, we are not against Beijing. If we deal with Beijing, we're not against Washington. That's what the president said. So what should we do at this point? At this point, it might be very wise to work with the buyer, all right? Now we have seen a bigger buyer than the US. A bigger buyer is China. A bigger buyer is Russia. A bigger buyer is BRICS is the newest guy in town. So let's go to bed with these guys, because now it's going to relieve our people. We are not going to compete fairly like the Americans do. Americans compete in an environment where they have no competition. Even if you are with them in business, they are buying your raw materials at almost free. Imagine somebody giving you one kwacha, give them 21 kwacha back. $1, give them 21 kwacha. That's an unfair advantage, exorbitant advantage. So now we're going to trade in an unfair way. Now see what the Americans feel about this.
Unity in their anxiety about a reckoning like never before.
The Fed has solved a series of financial crises by massively expanding its balance sheet, almost 12-fold. This only works because of the dollar's unique status. If that were to wane, America will face a reckoning like none before.
Also, it's been backed up by the strength and economic power of the United States and the fact that oil has always been traded in dollars. If that were to end, that would mean the end of the U.S. dollar.
The wave of panic is beginning to grip politicians, too. U.S. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene warned that if the dollar falls, Americans will face economic problems never before seen in their history.
I warned the dollar would be replaced with yuan a year ago when Washington decided to wage a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine, and now it's happening. The war against Ukraine war is going to plunge Americans into economic woes never seen before in our entire history if the dollar falls. They will be to blame and America will never recover.
Earlier, my colleague Nikki Aaron spoke to a panel of guests about the consequences of the fall of America's global financial dominance.
Well, the sanctions gave it a big boost forward. I think the idea was already in the heads of certain leaders because of the buildup in American debt to the rest of the world due to the large American trade deficit. We can see the two things working. The abuse of the dollar as the world reserve currency, and the continuing American trade deficits.
Xi Jinping was recently in Moscow for a meeting with the Russian leader. They talked extensively about strengthening the economic ties between China and Russia. How much of a big deal is this development for the global economy?
I think it is a historic moment. As some of us have been pointing out, that with the illegal seizure of foreign exchange reserves of sovereign nations within the dollar system, that was a big warning to other sovereign nations to be careful and not keep their precious wealth stored up through exports and hard-earned, work in US dollars. And that, of course, ultimately what is likely to damage the US dollar. But you need an alternative, and that's where the US for a long time has felt quite confident. There is no alternative. The world currency is the US dollar. Well, you can create alternatives. And of course, that's what a lot of countries have done, initially starting with a core group of countries. And you mentioned Russia, China. Of course, that cooperation is crucial. But there is, the bigger group, the BRICS countries, and more countries are joining the BRICS countries. The alternatives are now becoming very concrete and pragmatic.
To what extent do you think the actions of the US and some of its allies, like sanctions, for example, have actually contributed to this global de-dollarization?
We have to be very clear that the US has shot itself in the foot. It has created a situation where countries are in revulsion to American foreign policy and want to get as far away as possible from the US. Strictly from a business point of view, why would you want to invest in the US? And when I say invest, I mean work with the American currency or buy American treasuries. Why? Because that is an investment in the U.S. economy. Why would you want to do it? It's a bad investment. Again, the U.S. is a very destructive geopolitical actor, and it's a very carefree, wanton, licentious financial actor. So it's actually a horrible bet, the U.S. We see that the U.S. is unrepentant. Absolutely unrepentant. I had this naive hope that after we pulled out of Afghanistan, that maybe we're going to be finally a constructive actor in the international arena. And then, of course, what do? They start the war in Ukraine. The U.S. is hopeless. I'm sad, very sorry to say that, but pretty much a hopeless case. And I welcome the rise of new blocs across the globe. That would be great for the global economy.
Guys, those are Americans, and that's how they feel about the US. Even Americans are upset. They're upset with their own government because they have seen how the US government has mistreated other countries. Think of Afghanistan, how it was abused. Today, Cuba can't trade on their own. Afghanistan, Iraq, they can't trade on their own. They have to make a budget to go and be approved in a different country. Then Iraq sells their oil to the US, and then the US decides how much to give back Iraq for them to make a budget. Can you believe that? That's so sad. Cuba can't trade. Iran can't trade. And several other countries in the world cannot trade simply because they went against the US foreign policy. So the United States wanted to take over the world by imposing their policies on other nations like ours. So, Stephanie, it's a very sad reality. So my advice to somebody who's having money or thinking a lot about the dollar is, you know what to do. Go with the buyer in town. And this is the time for our country to negotiate, Stephanie. This is not a time to become a Muzungu and Kon. This is the time to make the best decisions for the country, but also for the citizens of this country. We have seen other nations, Kenya has done it, China has done it, Russia has done several other countries. We are not politicians, people. Stephen and I are talking this from the economic perspective. What should you do? Buy gold, buy silver, dump the dollar. All right? Because the days of the dollar are over. You have seen Americans are mourning right now. They are worried. They are paranoid. Of course, they're going to fight, but it's a battle they lost years ago. Stephen, I don't know what to think around all these things. I wish we could go on and on, but hey, guys, we are running out of time. And Stephen, I want to hear your views regarding these issues we've discussed today.
My view is you mentioned earlier that even economists do know about the trick that the Americans make with the dollar. And knowing that, I think my question is, why haven't we stood up for it? Is it the overdependence on grants? Are we afraid that we're not going to have a backing, especially with grants? Will become independent, not depend on other countries, especially the US, who happens to be one of the major donors.
Stefan, that's a very good question. And that's the question that a lot of presidents make. Dependence. When you now we depend on the dollar, on the US so much. Our reserve currency is in the US. Do you know the US can simply wake up one day and freeze our assets? Do you know that? And we're going to be broke as a country. They can ban us from the SWIFT. The society's worldwide interbank, of course, telecommunications system. They are going to the SWIFT societies worldwide, of course, interbank. Where's the other letter? Financial telecommunications. They're going to just simply block us. That means we can't send money in and out of Zambia to other countries. They control that. So when we run away from that, we are free people. Even if we dish the dollar, we have gold, we can sell gold to other nations. And if you think about Zimbabwe and those gold mafias, part of the reason why Zimbabwe sells their gold like that is because of the sanctions imposed on them. They can't trade. So the only easy way out to get money into the country is to simply launder money, use gold to bring in money in the country. Now, we don't want that to happen. We have copper. We can negotiate for a seat at the table, like the UK have done. Germany is now requesting for their gold to be repatriated to their country. So now other countries like the UK and the US are now sending back gold to the owners, because other countries are storing their gold with them. Now they are saying, not give us back our gold, because they have seen danger. The people are not against China, they're not against Russia like the US are putting it. They are against the US. The US is becoming dysfunctional and is falling, and it's high time our government did something about it. Without fear or favor, you must go with the buyer. That's the financial advice I can give anybody in the authorities of power, that you know what's happening. Don't pretend, all right? Don't put your interest above that of the nation. Economically speaking, economically, not as I'm not a politician, but speaking as a financial analyst, it's best to go with the buyer, because we have seen that these guys are not helping. What has China done to us that is so bad? Nothing. They've built roads for us. They've done all this. They are making it easy for us to trade, to compete fair with the United States. So who should you go for? Who is a better friend? I don't know. You decide. But what is my advice to you, Stephanie? Go with the buyer. If the US becomes the buyer, we're going to go with them. If China becomes the buyer and BRICS, we're going to go with BRICS. So for now, where we are, we don't want to stress our citizens and our reserves. Let's go with the buyer. That's the financial advice I can give anybody in the positions of power. Go with the buyer. Go with the buyer, Stephanie. Go with the buyer. That's the key. Go with the buyer.
We could actually go on and on. I know, right? So the saying goes, we go with the buyer wherever that we go.
With the buyer.
Well, time does not seem to be our best ally. This is a very good conversation. We could even do a replay or a repeat, but maybe just 2 comments and then we get to wrap it up.
All right. So, of course, there are. Yeah, it's been more of unless if there's a question, if somebody can give us a quick call and just ask, is there any question you want to ask, any contribution? What do you think? As maybe you can shout the number, Stephen, say somebody wants to give us a quick call, because obviously for them to type it will be longer because we have less time. Or maybe if you want to ask a question or contribution, you can simply put that one there. There's a link in the comment section that you can click on quickly right now if you want to come live and ask us your question or your contribution. And that'll be fine. But I want to hear your view, Stefan, as we conclude. So what do you think? What do you think about all this history we've looked at when it comes to the dollar and how they have been dealt with us? Who do you think is a better friend? I'm not going to answer that one for you, but I want you to give me your view. What do you think?
Firstly, I'm going to tell
not from the political perspective. We're not politicians. That's from the economic perspective.
Yeah, from the economic perspective, I should say it's a sad scenario. But what is even sad is that we've allowed this to go on for years. I think every country should be independent, and really, BRICS looks like something good to actually jump for. Just like you said, China has always tried to help us with, compete with America, which also looks like a good thing. But in as much as we want to look at BRIC, I think we should be very careful not just to jump in without fully getting to understand. I think we're looking forward to a time when we could actually be independent enough to make our on-board decisions. And also, I think from my own perspective, I'm also looking at a time when we could have the purchasing power on the international market.
Yes, Stephanie, that's a good one. Just buying a simple phone. Why should you spend 30,000 to buy a phone? 30,000, Stefan. That's not okay. Even Americans are shocked when you pay 30,000. They say, what is your currency like? Because they're just paying less than $1,000 to buy a phone. You are paying 30,000 of your currency. That's a lot of money to spend on a phone. Why? Because our culture has been manipulated. We are weak, even if we work so hard. And now here's my final comment, Stephanie, as we conclude. When the US Vice President came to Zambia, here's what the president said. I was taking notes in my diary, and I wrote a comment that the president said. All right, the president said this, and I quote: "What's holding us back is the debt issue. We carry a burden of debt that is making it difficult for us to restructure our economy." That was the president's words. And now here's what the VP from this responded. She said, "They're engaging all creditors, all bilateral creditors, to provide a meaningful debt reduction for Zambia. If they want to help Zambia, these guys print money, Stefan. We know they print money. They don't have to stress like us. They don't have to go and borrow. They can just print money. They've been printing money for years. Why didn't they just print 10 billion or 20 and just give it to us? If they want to be our good partners, why should they go and ask our creditors to reduce the debt? It's like Zambia Building Societies or even NAPSA. They give you money, and then someone says, no, reduce the debt. No, because the money NAPSA is giving you is not their money. Their people who want to get their pensions from that money. So asking those guys to reduce the debt is extremely unfair and uncalled for. It's out of topic. All right? So if these are good partners to our economy, they know our debt issue, and they're the ones who have imposed these practices on our economy. Why can't they just wipe the debt out? Because they can print the money and give the IMF. But they want to ask our creditors to reduce the debt, which is not fair. All right. So the economic advice is that, guys, let's go with the buyer. All right. We have somebody who has joined us, but we've run out of time. Unfortunately, we can't bring you on board. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think on that note, Mr. Lusambo, till next week, it's bye for now. And we are more than happy to read the comments that come even after. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. Go with the buyer. That's the keyword. Go with the buyer.